Hello, everyone. So, just want to make sure that we can all hear me first before we continue our workshop. Can we hear me? Fantastic, fantastic. So, let's just give it a few minutes, or let's say a few seconds, for everyone to join in, or for a few other people to join in, and then we can officially kick off. Okay. I think it's time for us to begin. So let's get right into it. We just have about, say, 45 to 50 minutes into this session. And this session really is we're going to be talking about the ABCs of a job application that stands out and gets you hired. First things first, I would like to thank the Reach Summit for having me here. My name is Sheila Ojei, and I am the head of communications for Jobberman Nigeria. But before we continue and talk about me and everything else and the reason why we're here, I'm just going to just share with you this particular slide, right? So this slide is our worksheet that we're going to be using for this workshop today. I might have 9 tasks for you. I might have less than 9 tasks for you. You don't know. You would only be able to tell as time goes on. So what's going to happen is that as we go on with this workshop, then you fill out the different tasks that I'm going to give you, right? So before we go into it, let me introduce myself. My name is Sheila Ojei. As I said before, I am the head of communications for Jobberman Nigeria. And what makes it interesting that I happen to be the one talking to you about job applications today, besides working for Jobberman Nigeria, is also the fact that I am a communications professional, and you will realize that everything that has to do with your job application and also has to do with you standing out has a lot to do with how you communicate as an individual. Besides that, I also started out my career in a totally different field. So I started out my career in finance. I know, right? So from finance, I moved into manufacturing. And then here I am working for a recruitment company as the head of communications, which means that there's something that I must have gotten right through my job application process, right? Moving from one industry to another, and also ensuring that I fit into every job role that I was given an opportunity to be a part of, right? So all of this is really just like, the fancy corporate profile stuff, but that's just really a summary of who I am. And then we'll go straight into it. So when we talk about our job application process, it's usually divided into 3. And we have first part has to do with your CV or your cover letter. The second part has to do with your job search. And then the third part has to do with the interview itself, right? So that's CVs, your job search, and interviews itself. So when you think about your job application process, always think about it in 3s: CVs or resume, depends on what you call it. And that also includes your cover letter, your job search, different ways in which you search for jobs, and finally, the job interview itself, which is usually the fun part, if I may say. So we're going straight into it of standing out with your CV. Again, the theme of this workshop is the ABCs of a job application that stands out and gets you hired. So we're going to look at it into bits and pieces. So based on the 3 different sections, we will talk about how to stand out in 3 different phases, from the CV and your resume to your job search, and finally into your job interview that gets you the job that you're looking for. So let's talk about CVs and resumes. So what is a CV, right? So sorry about that. So your CV is like your marketing tool, right? That is your, I often call it like your little portfolio. It's a short form of a portfolio of your brand, of who you are. It says everything that you are and all that you have accomplished, over the years in just, a few sheets of paper, right? So when preparing for your CV, there are a few things you need to take into account. So some of these things include, like, think like an employer, think like an employer. Also, what is relevant, what information is relevant. Also, be flexible. Then ensure that your CV fits the job. Then look at your layout and design. Look at your language. Look at the spelling and grammar. Then if you have any gaps and idle time in your CV, that's something that we should look at as well. And then make sure your CV is authentic. And what I mean by that is make sure it's genuine, because a lot of times we tend to, some people, I won't say everybody, some people tend to exaggerate, or, maybe not exaggerate, just add a little bit of sprinkles on CVs. Ensure that you also research the company that you're applying to as well, and make sure that your CV reflects to fit the job role or the job position that you are applying for, and then ensure that it's contemporary. The truth is, the average recruiter spends about 3 to 5 seconds looking at your resume. Yeah, 3 to 5 seconds looking at your resume, right? Which means that you need to have all your information handy, and you need to have all the information represented on your CV in a way that when a recruiter or whoever it is looking at your CV, almost immediately they can get the information that they need, right? Your CV is meant to market you in the best way possible. That's what your CV is meant to do. Your CV or your resume is meant to market you in the best way possible. But you see, now with a lot of online applications comes this thing or this system called the ATS, which is the applicant tracking system. And so what the applicant tracking system is that it's a software application that enables the electronic handling of recruitment and hiring needs. So what the ATS does, so the ATS is what it's called for short, is that it collects and stores CVs and resumes in a database for hiring professionals to access. So it's very important that for you to be able to stand out with your CV has to stand out on the applicant tracking system. So how can your CV stand out on the ATS? First, you have to carefully tailor your resume or your CV to the job description every single time you apply. I know it sounds very painstaking, and the truth is that sometimes we just want to have one size fits all, and you're applying for a business development role, and you're applying for a marketing role, and you're applying for, say, a project manager role, and you're using the same CV or the same resume. It's not going to work. That's not how it works, right? You have to ensure that you carefully tailor your CV to the job description every single time you apply. You also have to ensure that you optimize your CV for the ATS search and ranking algorithms by matching your resume keywords to the job description, right? So what I mean by that is that, say, for instance, you have a business development role, like just for instance, right? A business development role. And in the job description, one of the responsibilities of whoever has that role is the ability to be able to close partnership deals with strategic partners. That is a major item on the job description. When you are tailoring your CV for that particular role, you should be able to say that in your current role or in a role that you were a part of, you were able to close strategic partnerships or close deals or close contracts with strategic partners. That alone matches your CV with what is on the ATS. It's very important that you understand how the ATS works, because what happens is that the ATS is like a funnel, just like the image that we have here, right? It's like a funnel. A lot of CVs come in, and then when it comes in, the applications, the CVs come in with the applications, and then it goes through like a preliminary stage. So a lot of times, if you've applied for jobs like I have, you find that maybe like in a day, or sometimes in less than a day, or in less than a week, you get an email saying, oh, thank you so much for applying, but unfortunately, you don't fit the criteria, or unfortunately, we had to go with someone else. That's most likely because your CV failed the ATS test, right? And so when it goes through that, the next stage is that the applications are scored and ranked. So you have the initial part, which is just a pass and fail. And then after that, you have the applications are scored and ranked. And then after that, the highest ones are the ones that end up going to the recruiter. So just explaining how it works, how the funnel of the ATS works. So it's talking about how we stand out. And I said, first thing I said was carefully tailoring your resume to the job description, optimizing for the ATS search and ranking algorithms, use both long form and acronym version of keywords. So for instance, if you have an MBA, it should say Masters of Business Administration, and then in brackets have MBA. This is to enable maximum searchability. So that way, when the ATS is doing the search, it depends on what has been set. If it has been set for MBA, it will still count. It will still pick you out. If it has been set for Masters of Business Administration, it will also pick you out, right? Design-wise, keep your CV or your resume simple. So you see those photos that we like to have? It's not necessary. ATS doesn't see that, right? It doesn't see all of that. So all that fancy Canva designs, yeah, that doesn't quite work with the ATS. So it's best to keep your CV and your resume simple. Use traditional fonts like Georgia, Arial. Don't use tables. Don't go overboard with like headers and footers, because to be honest, the ATS is not going to read any of that, right? So use standard resume sections. So things like headings, work experience, educational experience, skills. Use those kind of headings. And don't go overboard with like all the fancy cute headings like, oh, where I've been, what I've done. That's for websites. That's not for your CV. And then avoid submitting your resume as a PDF unless the job application specifically asks you to list your PDF, right? Unless specifically the job application specifically asks you to submit a PDF file. The reason is because if it doesn't ask you to submit as a PDF file, the chances are that particular ATS system of that employer might read your PDF CV, your PDF resume as an image. And if he reads it as an image, then it's not able to read the different line items on that CV. So when in doubt, stick to Microsoft Word. I think that would be easy for everyone to remember, right? When in doubt, stick to Microsoft Word. So how do you prepare your CV for the ATS? And I feel like I've gone through that a little bit. But first of all, like I said, carefully tailor your CV to the job description. Optimize for the ATS search. Use both long form and acronyms, just like I said. Keep your resume simple. Use the standard resume section headings, and avoid submitting your resume as a PDF unless the system specifically lists PDF files among the acceptable options. Yeah? Okay, now if you have any questions, please feel free to drop a comment with your question, and I will be sure to answer them as I go, right? Okay, so what are the tips for writing a CV that stands out? And we've already addressed this. If you've noticed this, you will see that there are a few variations of me saying it, but we're all saying the exact same thing. So first things first is that you have to tailor your CV to each job advert by using the exact keywords and skills mentioned in the advert. Tailor your CV to each job advert by using the exact keywords and skills mentioned in the advert. Keep your CV short and simple. Now, I've come across CVs where it almost feels like I have a Bible with me. And I know, yes, you have a lot of years of experience. But usually what happens is when your CV is so long, you lose the interest of your recruiter or a possible recruiter. So what I would normally say when in doubt for things like that, for your older jobs, anything older than 10 years, summarize. If you can't take it out, if it's not relevant to the job that you're applying for, take it out. If you do not have that much work experience and you need to include it, then shorten it. Instead of having like a whole job description as your explanation on your CV, you should just explain in a few short sentences what it is that you did in that particular role, and specifically and most importantly, what you accomplished. So clearly state your achievements and how you achieved it. If possible, quantify the results achieved. And by that, we're saying, were you able to contribute 10% to the bottom line by, this role? Say if you were in sales, right? So if you were in sales, what were your achievements? What were your key accomplishments? Did you contribute 10% to profits? Were you able to cut down on sales costs? What were you able to do? You need to be able to quantify your achievements. Always check for spelling and grammatical errors on your CV. I mean, I think this goes without saying. Most of us should know that if you check for spelling and grammatical errors with your CV, it's very important and it goes a long way. And thank God for the likes of apps like Grammarly, where you can easily just filter through to make sure that there are no errors, right? Also ensure that you are using the right spelling. The reason I say there's a lot of times we use our computers, right? Obviously. And we're using the American spelling as opposed to the British spelling, or we're using the British spelling as opposed to the American spelling. This might not be a big deal. However, it also contributes to errors on your CV. So I would say, because we're in Nigeria, or for the people who are in Nigeria or people in British, colonized countries and in the UK and the rest, having the right spelling, so using the British spelling, is very important. And finally, be honest. I don't know how else to say this. Most times on our CV, we want to be able to want to say we've achieved all of this, and we want to say we have roles that we did or maybe did not have, depends on what we're looking for. It's that thing of claiming it by faith. And in the process, when we get asked questions regarding those roles, we are unable to defend or unable to say this is what I achieved or this is what I did. So be honest. Do not include jobs that you did not do, or include achievements that you never achieved. So like false achievements, don't do that. So this brings me to the first task for today. And the first task, so go back to the worksheet. If you don't have it, if you don't have the worksheet, I believe someone is going to drop the link where you can download the worksheet. So go back, get the worksheet. And when you get the worksheet, our very first task is for you to write the summary of your career. This is going to be a section of your CV, because now we're going to go into a deep dive into looking at the different sections of the CV and how you can stand out. So, task 1, summary of your career in not more than 3 sentences. So that is task 1. You don't have to fill it out now. It's something that you can fill out a bit later, but think about it. For task 1, what I would like you to do is for you to fill out the summary of your career in not more than 3 sentences, and ensure it has the number of years of experience that you have, as well as it has the number of years of experience that you have, as well as the areas that you offer value to the company. Now, we'll go into the next one, which is task 2, right? Task 2 is, what do you bring to the table? So, write out the skills that you possess. That is the second task. Task 2, write out the skills that you possess. Okay, next slide. So over here, what we have is a sample of a CV or resume. As you can see, it has a professional summary. So remember task 1, when I talked about your professional summary. Exactly. So that's what you're going to put there. So it has your professional summary. You see, this one says, expert marketing and advertising manager with over 5 years of professional experience heading marketing campaign and initiatives, developing strategies for campaigns and managing corporate communications, demonstrated expertise in leading highly proactive teams to ensure effective campaign and social media management, as well as utilizing metrics to increase brand awareness. And then task 2, when we're talking about core competencies, or we're saying, what do you bring to the table? This is what I mean. What do you bring to the table? And here we have digital marketing, team management, brand management, content development, and the rest of them, right? I believe that I can have the slides made available to everyone that's registered for this particular workshop. So if you would like to have the slides, please leave a comment, right? And I'll ensure that it's presented. Oh, it's sent. Sorry. So you have over here, you have the breakdown of the different professional experience. Again, look at the heading, professional experience, not this is where I've been or this is people that I worked for. No, professional experience. And then the next one, we're talking about using key action words. Always use action words, especially when you're describing your work achievements. So evaluated, supervised, launched, demonstrated, accomplished, developed. These are key words that show action. They show action words. So this is very, very important to include on your CV. When looking at your education and qualification, again, as you can see, straight to the point. You know, sometimes when people have their education, they want to write all the topics and all the different subjects that they had while they took the program. No, we don't need all of that. Just have your information. You have an MSc or a bachelor's or something, and the year. Then also definitely have your certifications as well as your professional qualification. So that's how you stand out with your CV. Now, how do we stand out with your cover letter, which is part of the, we say we have 3, and so we have 1, 2, 3. I'm spending so much time on the CV part and the cover letter part because that is actually the foundation of a lot of things. Everything else, once you have this part sorted, everything else just sort of flows going forward, right? So standing out with your cover letter. A cover letter clearly says why you are the best talent for a position. Most of us don't like writing cover letters, and I totally understand it can be stressful. But it should be engaging. Your cover letter should be engaging and convincing. So it should be clear, it should be precise. You should be able to say, what position are you applying for? Who are you? Why are you qualified? What is your personal experience? And what's the company information that you know, because you would have done your research? And then how is there synergy between you and the company that you're applying to? So the reason why your cover letter should be important and how it should stand out is because this is your opening act. We have the CV, yes, but this is the opportunity for the recruiter to get to know you, get to really, really know you. Think of it like sending a letter to a recruiter. Sometimes I say, think of it like sending a love letter, besides it being lovey-dovey. But think about it like sending a love letter to the recruiter, trying to convince this recruiter that, look, I am the woman or the man for you, right? It also shows how serious you are, and it expands and brings life to your CV and your resume. So while your CV is very concise, straight to the point, and everything, this also brings life to your CV and your resume, and it also shows your writing skill and how you communicate. So here we have broken it down into 4 paragraphs. The first paragraph is, who are you? How did you find the application? What are you applying for? Paragraph 2, in 3 to 4 sentences, summary of who you are, your knowledge, your skills, your expertise. Paragraph 3, what's your magic? What makes you tick? What connects you to the industry and the company and this particular role that you are applying for? What makes you fit and why you should be hired? And show your knowledge about the company and the culture. You should have done your research before sending your cover letter, so you're able to say, this is why I am a fit for your company. And finally, paragraph 4 is a call to action. This is very important. And that is saying, find my resume attached, or a call to action for a follow-up, right? And this is in cases where maybe you're emailing your CV or you're emailing to just, find out about things. You should always have a call to action. Maybe find some time to have a chat, find my resume attached. You can contact me. Always have a call to action in your CV and your, cover letter. Now, if it's a case where you're uploading it to an application, just find my CV or resume enclosed in with my application. So this is a sample cover letter. So we're just going to go through this briefly. Tips for cover letter content is that different industries have their trends. So it's important to have the right buzzwords, keywords, and phrases. Make sure you analyze the JD of what you're applying for so that your cover letter carefully reflects what it is that you're applying for and also shows that you have the experience. If you don't have the experience, you have the skill sets needed for that particular role, and demonstrate activities that imply key skills. And so we go to the next one. So now we've talked about standing out with your CV and standing out with your cover letter. So now we're going to talk about standing out with your job search. This is very important. So, see, nearly 70% of jobs are never posted on a website or listed in a newspaper, right? This is 2021. So let's just assume that we no longer list jobs in newspapers. So most jobs are actually not listed on platforms. The majority of your job search time should be spent networking, talking to people who can help you uncover opportunities that are not posted on any job board or website. Which brings me to task 3. Who is in your network? Think of the industry that you're in now or the industry that you're trying to go into and write 2 to 3 people that you know or you have access to that is actually working in that desired industry. And I'll use myself as an example. When I wanted to transition into communications, one of the first things I did was to contact people I knew who were already in the communications industry or were working in a communications role in various industries. So, sorry. All right, sorry about that. I've been having a cold, so my apologies. So, have that. So who is in your network? Who is in your network? Or who is in your network that is in the desired role? So narrow your focus. Consider the following, right? 1, your career goal. What are you trying to achieve? Industry and the desired role. The type of organization you want to work in. Then obviously platforms to get or as sources for these job postings. There are quite a number of them, including Jobberman and LinkedIn. Job search materials, we already went through that. So your cover letter and your CV. And finally, your network, just like I explained before. 70% of the jobs are not posted online. So you need to be building your network while you are job searching, right? We already know what LinkedIn is. I assume we do. But if you don't, it's a premier social business network providing a venue to market your skills and experience, right? It's also like a networking dream space, which means that you are able to connect with people who you might not even know personally, but are working in the industries that you're looking to, right? And then you have job search platforms, the likes of Jobberman, Indeed, Glassdoor, and the rest of them. And so we come to the final stage of standing out, and that is standing out at your interview. So personally, this is my favorite part of the job application process, because for me, this is the time where the recruiter finally gets to see you face to face. Think about it like going on a first date, right? So the best candidates on paper can lose a job or to a less experienced candidate based on a bad interview. Yeah. You're the best candidate for a job does not necessarily mean that you are the smartest. It also doesn't necessarily mean that you are a fit for the company. So you always have to be prepared to present your best self to a successful interview. The good news is that interviewing is a skill that you can learn, you can practice, and you can learn. So there's a basic checklist. Before the interview, research the company and the background of the company. That's very good for conversation. Prepare questions and explanation for your CV. Prepare questions and explanations of your CV. And finally, before your interview, look sharp and look smart. During the interview, listen carefully to the interviewer. Relate your skills, accomplishments, and objectives to the needs of the company. So this is not where you just go off point in your conversations. Always make sure in everything you do, bring it back to why you were there. And that is for a particular role. So whenever you talk about your skills, always ensure that you're listening carefully. And then you're also relating your skills to the job role that you're applying for, the skills that you've acquired over time. Provide specific examples. Interviewers want to know what examples they are. They want to know instances. It's like mini case studies. They want to know instances where you have, say for instance, worked under pressure, or you have managed a team that was very difficult, or you have had to manage a difficult boss. Those are the kind of things that they would ask or they might ask. So you should be able to give specific examples. Don't mention names. You don't have to mention names or specific things that could be a breach of confidentiality, but be able to give specific examples. Do ask questions at the end of the interview. I always say, and that should actually be task 5, is what is the most important to you? What is the most important to you in any company, and have that as your question. So for me, one of my most important questions is what does career growth look like in your company? For some other people, it's kind of like, how does your company support a work-life balance? How does your company support mothers? Things like that. What is it that is the most important to you? And then be prepared to ask that question. One, it shows that you're thinking about the company and you're also trying to figure out how the company is a fit for you. And then after the interview, please do follow up with the interview with either a phone call or an email. So I always say an email as opposed to a phone call. Now, there are instances where if you did well on your interview, this would really just, bring you back up on the list if they've had some internal things and they're trying to sort things out. However, you should focus more on the before and during the interview. The after the interview checklist is not really it's not a damage control measure, right? So ensure that you do well before and during the interview, so that when you have to send an email after the interview, you feel a bit more comfortable. So you can send a thank you note within 24 hours of the interview. And if you don't hear from the employer after the hiring timeline they initially indicated, you can follow up professionally and do that just once, right? So common interview questions. These are common ones that you will always get from interviewers. And if you've attended interviewers like I've attended, you would know some of these questions, you recognize them. So like, tell me about yourself. What are your strengths? What are your areas of development? So what are your weaknesses? Why should we hire you? Why are you a good fit for this company? Tell me about a time you led a team at work. Did any problems come up? How did you solve them? Or tell me about a time you were under a lot of pressure and what was going on and how did you get through it? If you are interviewing for manager role, you will get questions like, how do you manage difficult colleagues? How do you manage, say, a member of your team who is not growing or who isn't like doing very well at work? How do you encourage them? How do you motivate your teams? Those are the kind of questions that you would get. Practice. That's also another thing, right? So when you practice, it's like going for a speaking engagement, right? So you have to practice. Get your friends to practice with you. Get whoever, anybody. Practice with yourself. Face the mirror and practice. Like, tell me about yourself. And when you're talking about yourself, that's like your elevator pitch. That's like a 1 minute of who you are. Think about your professional summary on your CV. That really is you answering that question of, tell me about yourself. And then interview questions, when I was saying you should have a question that you should ask. So interview questions you should ask and you can ask is when the interviewer asks you a question like, oh, do you have any questions for us? Yes, you do. Because again, this also shows that you've been thinking about the company and seeing that, you fit, or the company is also a fit for you. This is the chance for the company or the interviewer to sell themselves to you. So you've done the selling of yourselves to them. Now it's their turn. Now you're flipping the script and you're flipping the table. Now they have to sell themselves to you. And so you can ask questions. If you're looking for simple questions, you can ask questions like, what does a typical day look like for you? Or what does a typical work day look like for this particular job role? What is the expectations of this job role? What is the greatest challenge of the team that you're facing right now? Now, that is if you're speaking to the manager who you might be reporting to if you had the role. How does the company measure success? For instance, what do you look out for in a member of the team? And what's the progression? What is the progression for this role in the company? Right. I also mentioned previous ones when I said for task 5 of what is important to you. You can also ask other questions that may not have to be about the role, but about the company that is very important to you. And so on that note, I would say that you should always remember that the most successful candidates are those who relay facts and success stories in a positive and enthusiastic way. So you have to be positive, you have to be enthusiastic, and you always have to be factual in everything that you in your conversation, in your CV, and in your cover letter. And so that's really how you stand out end to end. 3 ways: standing out on your CV and your cover letter, standing out in your job search. Remember, for your job search, networking. It's very important. And standing out in your interview. For your interview, always be prepared. Always be prepared. So I would say, thank you very much. But one more time before we go. ABCs, right? 1, stand out for your CV and your cover letter. Remember the ATS. Always remember the ATS. When in doubt, Microsoft Word, keep it simple. Standing out in your job search, networking is very important. Always network, and network socially, network professionally. Also research your job boards to see what is out there. And number 3, for your interviews, come prepared. Always be prepared and practice before you go for your interview. And so if you have any questions, please drop it in the comment section. I think we still have a few more minutes. I'm not sure how many more minutes, but we still have a few more minutes to the end of this workshop. While I wait to see what questions we have, I would just say, let me go through the different tasks that we have for this particular workshop. Task 1 was the summary of your career. Task 2, what do you bring to the table? Which are your skills? Task 3 was, task 3 was your key accomplishments. Task 4 was your network. Write 2 to 3 people who are in your network, that are in your desired role or industry. And then task 5, what was task 5 again? Just go back to my notes. I know I had task 5 somewhere. If you're paying attention, tell me what task 5 was, because now I can't find my notes on that. So there's a question, says, how do you deal with interviewers saying they would get back to you and they never do? What can I say? It is quite sad that this happens a lot. However, one thing I always say is send a follow-up email, right? So when they say they will get back to you, first thing is you ask them the timeline, right? So I always ask for a timeline. I say, we'll get back to you. And my timeline is like, so what is the expected timeline? And if they say, in 2 weeks or 3 weeks, I'm like, okay, fine. So if I don't hear from them within 2 to 3 weeks, then I would send an email to just say, I'm following up based on our last conversation. And most times they would respond, but if they don't respond after that, then we'll let it go, right? I know there are other people who would say, send another email and ask them how you did, what you could improve on. But to be honest, not a lot of recruiters or HR managers actually respond with that feedback. So I would say, again, respond, give it once the timeline has elapsed, say 2 to 3 weeks, send an email to just know what the position or the status is, an update. And then after then, if you still don't hear from them, then we move on to the next best one. Yeah. Any other questions? And task 5, I remember what task 5 was now. Task 5 was, what is the most important thing to you? What is the most important thing to you that you would like to know from a company? What is the most important thing, like the most important, whether it's intrinsic or traits of a company? So like benefits or supports, things like that. What is it that is important to you? Because that makes the question that you will ask your interviewer. Any more questions? I think we have about 5 minutes left for the workshop. Oh, okay. So the next question is, how does one deal with the rejection from several interviewers? I would say maybe interviewers or interviews. How do I put this? Rejection is a part of life. Please do not see it as failure. See it as a learning process. So after every interview, ask yourself, what did I do right and what did I do wrong? And then when you get to your next interview, before your next interview, practice. So sometimes what I do personally is that I play back in my head. This is what the interview. Okay, maybe I should have said this better. Maybe I should have done this, better. And then when I go for the next interview, I will make sure that everything that I had learned from the previous, my previous experience, my previous rejection experience, everything that I have learned from there, I would make sure that I have improved on them by my next interview. So do not look at it as a sign of failure or a sign of rejection. I would say look at it as an area or a lesson, an area of improvement or a lesson for you. And you will find that job that you are a perfect fit for and is also a perfect fit for you. Okay, so if there are no more questions, I would say that thank you very much for being a part of the workshop today. if you would like to ask me any questions, maybe because you're too shy, or maybe because I haven't covered the area, please, you can search for me on LinkedIn. My name is Sheila Ojei, Sheila Ojei on LinkedIn. And I will be able to give you, or be able to answer you. Okay, so before we go, there's one last question. It says, how would you advise a recent graduate with no experience to break into a new industry? And this is where your skills come in handy. So whoever asked this question, this is a very good question. Sometimes, most times we focus so much on experience, and experience is very important, right? But our skills is what is actually important as well. So what skills do you bring on board? What skills are you bringing on board? And so say, for instance, let me give an example now. Maybe you wanted to get a job as a social media manager and you have never worked as a social media manager before. You should be able to say, what skills do you have? Content development, content creation, you're organized, you're good at scheduling, things like that, right? So the fact that you're recent graduate without experience doesn't mean that you don't have the skills that is needed for that particular role. Because for you to even apply for that role or be interested in the role, it means that you think you're a good fit. So the first question is, why are you a good fit, right? And so if you can answer why you're a good fit, then you'll be able to identify the skills you are that makes you the perfect fit for that particular role. Okay, so not having experience, it's not the end of the world. Everybody had to start from somewhere. I started from somewhere. You can start from somewhere. But there's something that nobody can take away from you, and that is your skills. What skills do you have? What skills do you bring to the table? I feel like I should be playing some music while I wait for more questions. But I don't have a DJ for this workshop, so it's okay. I will continue to wait. If you have any more questions, please leave it in the comment section. And then I will be sure to answer that. But while we're at it, remember that you can find me on LinkedIn. So let's network, because networking is very important. You can look for me on LinkedIn. The name is Sheila Ojei, Sheila Ojei. And remember that in your job search process, your job application process, you have to stand out on your CV and your cover letter, stand out on your job search, and then stand out in your interview. I just saw one last question, but unfortunately, I won't be able to take it today because that is a long debate on how to negotiate a salary negotiation. But send me a message on LinkedIn and I will be sure to respond with an answer to that. Okay. So thank you so much for your time today. This was fun. And definitely, I look forward to connecting with every one of you via LinkedIn or via whatever medium. And once again, thank you so much to Reach Summit for having me.